everybody, John Hand, Pulsing Cinema, you know the drill. I'm here today to talk about an absolute tragedy, and it's this guy, Lost Highway. Not really an absolute tragedy of a film, an absolute tragedy of a Laserdisc release. Some people would say an absolute tragedy of a film. Lost Highway was really the head screw of 1997 when it came out, and I remember this was like one of the last films that I dragged my mom to go see, because I was like, she's like, oh, okay, you can see weird movies, but I've got to go with you. I dragged my mom to see Richard Stanley's Hardware. I dragged my mom to see Hellraiser 3. I dragged my mom to see Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. I think she should have pulled me out of that one, just on principle, because that movie was just. But anyway, but Lost Highway is yeah, definitely it's a wild movie. It's not my favorite David Lynch film, but it's a David Lynch film I think about a lot. You know, I think about some of the images of it, and there's no big set pieces. There's just this tone of violence and weirdness, and the kind of the David Lynch Barry Gifford combination, continuing on from Wild at Heart, their first collaboration, and it's kind of has shadings of noir, the kind of David Lynch noir type, West Coast weirdness. Lost Highway is in some way, it feels like it's kind of continuing on from Blue Velvet. You know, it's that kind of weird vibe. Robert Loggia is great as the villain. Robert Loggia always wanted to be Frank Booth in Blue Velvet, and he gets his opportunity to be Booth in this one, and Wild, and obviously I think Dennis Hopper was a much more well suited for that role. I couldn't see Loggia in Blue Velvet, but at the same time, he gets his little chance to shine. So yeah, and whatever you think of the film, it is what it is, and it has that signature Lynch touch, and it's really kind of Lynch at the height of his powers, though really at this point, kind of after everybody wanted another Twin Peaks. And he didn't give him another Twin Peaks. He gave him something with some Bill Pullman and some really superb nude scenes from Arquette. The big tragedy that I'm speaking of is this Laserdisc release, which I bought when it came out in 1997. There was no DVD at that point, no DVD release of Lost Highway. Anyway, you just had the Polygram Video Image Entertainment Laserdisc, and then the VHS, and of course you wanted to go with the Laserdisc, which is 235 widescreen, has Dolby Digital. It's again an early disc with Dolby Digital. At this point, Dolby Digital was pretty much standard on Laserdisc. It was becoming standard, but it was still a thrill to have a track which I couldn't play because I didn't have the hardware. But the stereo track on this thing, the stereo PCM tracks on Lost Highway Laserdisc are incredible. Thumping bass, just really amazing stuff. The film starts off with a great song, David Bowie, Deranged, and it rocks. It rocked my retro, my vintage stereo home theater setup at that point, which was kind of a glorified boombox. But despite that, despite the humble nature of my hardware, the quality of this stereo track really just, it was readily apparent, and that's really what still drives people to Laserdisc, and why still you have some Laserdisc nuts, because that stereo PCM track is just, on the right film, it just sounds beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Dolby Digital can sound beautiful, DTS can sound beautiful, but there's something, once you get kind of addicted to the Laserdisc stereo PCM audio, it's difficult for some people to come off that. But as I say, as I kind of teased earlier, the impending tragedy of this release is the fact that it was pressed by Sony. Yes, it's oh god, this thing was pressed. You even see it on the label, press LDAC, Sony LDAC, the bane of any Laserdisc collector or Laserdisc viewer. Even at that time, was the Sony pressing plant. The Sony pressing plant, a popular pressing plant. Many Disney releases were pressed on it. Many Image releases went through this plant, and this plant is notorious for producing discs which rot. Laser rot is a deterioration of the disc, which eventually causes the disc to just become an unplayable mess. There's no way to reverse laser rot. It's some people say that it's a printing defect. There's others argue it's kind of atmospheric. Has to do with storage of the disc. There's a lot of different factors involved, and just because a disc has some speckling on it, that doesn't mean it's necessarily rotting. Because again, we're dealing with Laserdisc and analog, and there's a lot of different printing defects, pressing defects. Physical damage to the disc can cause weird issues. So just because a disc has a little light speckling, that doesn't mean that it has laser rot. Laser rot is something totally different. It gets progressively worse, and it's irreversible and bad. Sometimes discs with like a light speckling. Sometimes it could even be in the master. It could be in the specific pressing, and oftentimes those things will just be speckly forever. You'll play that disc. 5 years from now, it'll be the same speckling in the same area. But not the case with Lost Highway. Lost Highway is a true blue speckler, is a true blue rotter, and it breaks my heart. My personal copy of Lost Highway, disc 1 it's a 3-disc set. Side 3 is in CAV, and 2 discs. Disc 1, side 1 plays beautifully. Still, toward the end of it, I think there's some foreshadowing of bad times. The trouble starts on side 2, disc 1, side 2. And that side starts with Balthazar Getty sunning himself outside, and there's that beautiful loungy music playing, and the loungy music is all cutting out and static, and you can see, and it's all this pattern of noise, and it's just horrible. It makes me sad. I mean, I remember the first time I played this, it played through fine, beautiful, and then subsequently a few years later, I was like, wow, this is pretty. I want to throw this disc in, and watch it, and I began to to see the static and the problems. And then subsequently, every time I've watched this, the statics and the problems have gotten worse. Disc 2 side 3 also shows some signs of rot right now, though though disc 1 side 2 shows the worst. But again, it's a real true tragedy. That's such a cool film. I mean, late 90s widescreen, anamorphic, standard definition laserdisc transfer. The colors are a little bit fuzzy, a little bit of chroma noise. I'm sure if you had the super duper 3D comb filters and high definition upresing, you could make this disc look okay. But it still has that great, the original cover art, that cool, the original poster art for the film, which is much cooler than what they've come up with subsequently, which it's okay, but it's not this kind of split face thing, which somehow plays into the idea of split identities and then the film and things like that. But man, I'm just still thinking about it right now. It bums me out, Now they did repress it. Now, when I bought this, of course, I was still a young kid. I was just at the mercy of and in that early era, the internet was not what it was right now. There was often no one to tell you, hey, this disc is pressed by Sony. Stay away from it. We had alt.video.laserdisc. You had news groups. That was the biggest form of information, and that was those pretty much it. Who else are you going to go to at that point? So, I just bought this disc. I think I paid full price for it at that point. I think it was either $39 or $49 at Saturday Matinee. And great mall video store, long departed. Kind of like Suncoast. I think they may have been owned by the same company, Suncoast Saturday Matinee. In any case, rest in peace, Saturday Matinee. But, again, you didn't have any choice. If you wanted to buy the film on a disc format, on the Laserdisc, if you were a laser nut, you just, got it. You bought the ticket, you take the ride, They did repress this. They did repress it. They repressed it at Pioneer Kure, which is one of the great Japanese pressing plant, and they're kind of renowned for doing superb, high-end, beautiful Laserdisc transfers. But unfortunately, I have the first pressing. I had no idea that there was going to be a subsequent pressing. In the Pioneer Repress, the label is white, so that's what you want to go for immediately here, along with the mint marks and all that other stuff. I think that's the main way you can tell them apart. But in any case, Lost Highway, a cool film, but a problematic laser release. Like many of the Laserdisc release, Laserdisc was not a perfect format, and if you want to get involved in Laserdisc, you gotta accept the problems. If you're a long-time Laserdisc owner, you've already accepted them, and you've probably abandoned Laserdisc by now. And by the way, in the case of Lost Highway, there's much better ways to watch it. There's the European DVDs, the US DVD, which was only released in 2008. But I have that DVD. It's perfect release. Now you have the Blu-rays of this film surfacing, so go for the DVD, go for the Blu-ray, and skip the rotting disc unless you want some nice wall art. So there you go.